Top 5 mistakes when going through an interview at the U.S. Embassy. Hey everybody, this is Charles Raether at AmLaw Group, where we've been helping clients such as yourselves for more than 20 years making the right and effective choice in effectively transitioning to the U.S., whether it's on a temporary visa or for a green card. So today's discussion is how to get through that darn embassy interview. What I always tell clients is when you're doing an interview, going through an interview at the embassy, you should think about it as if you're selling yourself. This is like a marketing experiment of yourself. You're promoting your personal brand to the officer to explain to them why they should award that visa for you. And so in the eyes of a consular officer, the biggest factor they're going to look at when granting a non-immigrant visa is how likely is it that you're going to come back to your home country. They don't care how great of a superstar you are, how well you sing, how much money is in your bank account. They want to be convinced that you're going to come back from the US to your home country. Now, if you're applying for an immigrant visa, as ironic as it sounds, the interview process in general for immigrant visas is a little bit easier. Again, if you've got some problematic issues in your past, either criminal convictions, other issues that could cause problems at an immigrant visa interview, but generally, assuming you don't have any of those outstanding factors, the non-immigrant visa is going to be a little bit more difficult. So what do you do to ace your interview? So the first thing is always make sure you're calm. It's a bit of a psychology test, a psychological test. They're looking at how you're behaving. And even if they're asking an easy question like, what's your name and where were you born? If you start getting nervous and you got sweat coming down your face, that's going to bring up questions in their mind. So I understand with such an easy question like that, you're probably not going to have problems. But even ones that are a little bit more difficult, if you start sweating, they're going to probably notice it and delve even further. So try to remain calm, try to remain cool, and keep your poker face on to hide any possible nerves that you might have. Other problem is when there's inconsistent information. So that's either inconsistent information you provide during the interview, like at the beginning you say one thing, at the end you say another thing. That's a problem. Another problem is where you might have written something in your DS-160 form, and then at the interview, you say something quite different. And it's not always a matter of them quizzing you, hey, what did you answer for this question in the form? But it's more like they will ask some general questions, and then they will start looking at seeing your responses. Or what happens as well, they may do a little research before your interview, and they might double check on some of your answers. And they might see that even though you said you had never applied for a visa before, they can find out that 5 years ago you did apply and you got a denial. That's a problem. You never want to hide anything from the consular officers. Now, another question that comes up in the non-immigrant visa space is when they ask what you're coming to the US for and how long you're going to be here for. This is probably most relevant during a tourist visa interview, and we're not going to touch on that since we really don't deal with tourist visas that much, but it also can come up if you've got an E2 and O1. They want to find out a little bit, okay, what are you planning to do in the US? Okay, you're coming to work, you're going to develop your business, but they might want to know what are your long-term plans. For an E2 visa, for example, theoretically, you've got to show that you still have ties with your home country, and after some period of time, you're going to come back to your home country. So they might ask you questions about, do you have a business back in the home country? Do you have relatives? Do you have real estate? Are you going to continue to keep that real estate and your business going while you're in the US on the E2? Another issue that comes up oftentimes is, and I've heard this from consular officers myself, is that they want to get a feel for the person, if this is the type of person they'd like to have as a neighbor. And so I think no matter how you respond to the officer, you should always be polite. You shouldn't be overly critical. You should dress respectfully, decently. I'm not saying you got to have a three-piece biryani suit or anything, but look reasonably well. And I think a good analogy is, is the officer sitting there thinking, yeah, this would be a nice person to have as a neighbor. There's no legal requirement, whether you're getting an E2 or an EB5, to be a nice person, but your ability to do so will always help you in the long run with the interview process. The other thing that I always tell my clients, have a little short elevator pitch about yourself and your plans. Again, it should be tailored to the type of visa you have. So if you've got an E2 visa, you're going to want to talk a little bit more about your business. If it's a tourist visa, you're going to talk a little bit maybe about your plans to visit the US. But I would say generally at the beginning of the interview, most officers start the interview by kind of a general question just to get things going, but you should use that softball question to your advantage. And if you just kind of hem and haw, that's not going to really create a good impression. It's best to have like maybe a 5 or 10 second rehearsed piece in your mind. You don't want to have a 30-second dialogue hey, I'm an experienced producer with 20 years of experience, and we're planning to do a number of new movies or productions in the United States in the first couple of years, and after that, we're going to develop it to do X, Y, and Z. You know what you're doing. You've got a clear vision, a clear plan, and you've got your numbers down pat. And in closing, I also wanted to mention, what about documents? You don't need to bring in everything. The embassy usually advises bringing in a copy of your petition. If this was a business petition like an E2, L1, O1, they generally advise bringing in a copy of it. That might be a little bit of overkill. I don't think you need to bring a whole copy of everything, but certainly the most important documents. The one thing is, focus on the oral conversation in the interview. This is a person-to-person interaction. This isn't, shuffling out the documents and overwhelming them with paper. You can bring some critical documents that might be necessary. Certainly, if it's an immigrant visa, all your, birth certificates, marriage certificates, all that kind of stuff. And of course, we would advise you on what exactly to bring. But don't think, especially if you're going for a non-immigrant visa, don't think you're going to overwhelm them or impress them with all these papers. Please feel free to sign up for our channel going forward so you don't miss any future episodes. And like I said, check out the description below to get a copy of our how-to guide, how to ace your consular immigration interview, to give you more tips on how to do a good job on your interview and make sure you successfully get your visa.